Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Rideshare Etiquette. I am your host, and tonight we're going to discuss small talk. What topics are good to talk about in the backseat of a Lyft or an Uber with your driver? And as a driver, what topics should you shy away from? So I went to my favorite go-to. Excuse me a minute. I'm just going to have a quick cup of tea. I got a little frog in my throat here. Quick sip of tea. Sorry about that. So anyways, I'm going to my friendly neighborhood Google search, and I Googled small talk etiquette. So basically, it's just trying to give you guidelines on what is the best thing for a passenger and a driver to discuss. And, there's many topics. Okay, I usually, passengers, when they get in my car, and I can always kind of tell they want to talk. Because the first thing they will talk to me or ask me about is, how is your day going? How is your night going? Number one, I really don't like being asked that question because it's intrusive. But on their end, they're trying to make small talk. They're trying to get a conversation going. Now, I really, truly don't know how to answer it. So I'm just like, oh, it's okay. Or it's, it's going. I mean, and I'm not saying it's bad that it's going. But then I know this person wants to talk, and I'm not trying to put them off, but my head is like, okay, what's a good subject to talk about? So then, in Michigan, the weather is like, everybody talks about the weather. You can be a complete and total stranger, and you can have a very in-depth conversation for 15 minutes with them about the weather. It's just, that's how it's always been for as far as I'm growing up. And, sometimes I read these little articles about making small talk, and they say, try and avoid talking about the weather. I can't say it's so cliched, but it's so, basic, if you will. It's like, you can find somebody who wants to discuss deeper matters. And I've had some really great conversations with people in regards to artificial intelligence and the role it's playing in today's automotive industry and how cars communicate with one another. And I've learned a lot, and I've also, read enough to where I could participate on the conversation. Now, that might be a little bit too technical for some people where they don't want to go down that road. And then some people are just trying to be polite and make small talk. What are really good suggestions for making small talk so that you as a passenger will feel comfortable and you as a driver will equally feel comfortable is, yes, current events, but don't get into anything controversial like government or politics. Okay, Michigan roads, a thorn in everybody's side, whether you visit the city, the state, whether you live here, work here, visit here, whatever have you. Yes, we can get into quite a conversation about fixing the damn roads, as our governor used for her campaign slogan. That's one subject, sorry. I need another sip of tea. One moment, please. Okay, that was a big sip, and it's so good. Things like that. You can talk about transportation, and you're in the business of transportation. You're in the field of transportation because you are a rideshare driver. So technically, you are in the field of transportation. So that's one thing you can talk about, the roads, or you can talk about the sports teams, great conversation. Now, maybe your passenger is not really fully into the Pistons, the Red Wings, or the Tigers, or the Lions, and maybe sports isn't the genre they want to talk about or the category they want to talk about. I'm also a amateur wildlife, nature, landscape photography photographer who's also, I am trying to branch out and do street photography and architectural photography. And sometimes people will read my bio on both my Lyft and Uber app, and they'll see it and they're like, oh, you do photography. And of course, the first thing they ask is, do you do portraiture, children's portraits? And I'll be honest with you, I tell them, no, I do wildlife, landscape, nature. You need to get someone who does portraiture. But then there are times when I strike gold and I get a passenger who has taken photography courses or is a photographer. That is their line of work. They're doing it for a business. I met this really cool customer. I always refer to my passengers as customers, but I mean passengers. She worked at an art gallery in Southfield, and she was their photographer. And she basically was doing product photography, but she was, talking about what she uses, her gear, and her settings. And I was like, sitting there with my mouth open, I was like learning so much from her. I was in awe. That for me was a great conversation. And I've had many conversations with other people, who know a little bit about lenses and makers of lenses. But I digress. But that's one subject where you can make small talk and it becomes a big talk. Me personally, I have an aversion to small talk because the small talk on most cases is people wanting to know personal information about you. I don't understand that. Why does a complete stranger need to know if you're married? Why does a complete stranger need to know how many kids you have or where you live? I know they're trying to be polite. I know they're trying to get a little bit more information about you as a driver just to see what kind of person you are. But at the same time, that's really a topic you should steer away from as a passenger, as a driver. Do not ask your passenger, so you married, so you got a boyfriend. Don't ask that. It's a creepy question on the driver's side. It's on the passenger side, it's intrusive. If I want to tell you about my family, I will offer up that information. But I'm not going to ask you about your family because it's none of my business to ask you about your family unless you want to talk about it and bring it up yourself. Then fine. So that's another little subject that it's recommended to stay away from when making small talk, and it's just being also a good listener on the driver's part, because sometimes I get people who, especially elderly people, where they don't have somebody to talk to, and it's nice for them to get out and about in the world and encounter other people where they can strike up conversations. And sometimes you just have to let them talk, because when they get home, maybe there's nobody there to talk to. So here's some of the other subjects you should avoid when you are with complete strangers in your car. Your health or your diet habits. Now, I will be honest with you, I haven't really discussed health or too much with my passengers. I'll just say, my arthritis is acting up, but don't feel sorry for me. But I have had some really interesting conversations with people who have done the keto diet or very knowledgeable conversations as well. And recently I had a lady, and she was telling me why she went vegan, but I think she really meant vegetarian because she, told me what she had bought for dinner that night, and she told me what she was going to eat and what she wasn't going to eat. And I'm like, yeah, as a vegan, you don't really eat that. But then I'm like, I'm not going to tell her what she can eat and not eat. But she had such a valid reason for going vegetarian. And I was like, good for you, Off-color jokes. Yeah, just don't. Everybody nowadays, they're just so, hypersensitive. It's like you don't know who you're going to offend. And I've had conversations in the car with passengers about, people need to develop a thick skin, and everybody's so eager to cry wolf because they've been offended. And it's like, come on, people. have a little self-deprecating humor. In other words, laugh at yourself. Don't take it so seriously. There are times when somebody doesn't mean it in a very mean and malicious manner, or a degrading manner, or even try to be racist. But at the same time, just steer clear of that kind of topic. You really, don't want to engage in gossip either, and sometimes I have had the occasional passenger, not often, yay, thank you, who wants to kind of go down the rabbit hole and speak ill of their relatives, public figures, anybody and everybody, and I'm just like thinking to myself, wow. So then I do, oh yeah, I didn't know that, or wow, oh yeah, okay, wow, I didn't know that. That kind of, because I feel put upon, it's awkward for me as a driver, and in the same hand, drivers don't do that either, don't belittle public figures or relatives or friends or even your passenger. It's always about having a good ride, a good conversation. We get rated on Friendly Fun Conversations, fun driver, that sort of thing. Going back to a previous podcast where one of my passengers always has asked, what is your worst horror story driving for Lyft and Uber? And I said mine are really tame compared to what I've heard from other drivers. But I have some really cute anecdotal stories that I can tell, and they do make my passenger laugh. And to me, I'd rather go down that road. Now, sometimes I read articles about drivers saying, well, I always like to ask my passenger, what thing have they done in their life that has impacted them the most? Yeah, no, not for me. That's that driver. I mean, maybe somebody doesn't want to give up that information. Maybe they're just like an introvert and they don't want to talk about it, and they'd rather just get to where they need to go without, having a driver being a nosy parker, and I get that. So it's basically small talk etiquette 101. Avoid certain topics. No religion, no politics. Don't discuss that with strangers. Don't engage in off-color jokes. Don't tell, mean gossip stories, because just don't be that person. And if you're really, like, what do I talk about to my driver? Sometimes passengers will ask me, what do you like to talk about? And usually I kind of sense a lull in the conversation, so I will kind of steer it towards, the weather, the sports. Usually I can find somebody who's a Spartan or a Wolverine, Go Blue in the car, and we can have conversations along that end. Photography, tech talk, I've even had some really interesting conversations with people about stem cell therapy. And that's me. I like to have those deep, intelligent talks, intelligent convos where I'm like, wow. And then even travel conversations. I met a guy who just got back from Germany, and he was so excited and so in love with Germany, and I was so jealous. But at the same time, I was able to tell him about my experiences traveling in Germany. Well, that's all I want to talk about for tonight. I'm going to sign off. Guys, have a good night. Peace, love, woof. Be safe, take care, and treat each other well. Have a good night.